Hello and welcome to This Explainer. I am absolutely buzzing to have you all here today. We are about to embark on a wildly entertaining and honestly, occasionally life or death journey into the actual architecture of our written language. Yep, we're diving into the Punctuation Survival Guide. Now, I know exactly what some of you are thinking. Punctuation? Really? Exciting? But trust me on this one. By the time we wrap up, you'll see these little dots, squiggles, and lines not as boring rules, but as the absolute heartbeat of clear communication. Oh, and a quick shout out to academic Zenith Online Academy for making this explainer possible. Admissions are currently open, so make sure to book your free demo class and grab a 30% discount on any course. Right, grab your notebooks, get comfy, and let's survive the grammatical wilderness. Here's the map for our expedition today. 1. The power of punctuation. 2. The core 14 marks. 3. Mastering the tricky comma. 4. Navigating quotes and brackets. And finally, 5. Style guides and consistency. Let's get straight into it. Section 1. The power of punctuation. Let's look at exactly why this stuff matters so much. You see, written language naturally lacks the pitch, the tone, and the pauses of spoken speech. Without those physical cues, words are basically just blocks of text. Just look at these two sentences. On one side, we've got, "Stop clubbing baby seals." That little comma right there, it creates a direct address. It literally turns the sentence into a friendly, if slightly weird, warning spoken directly to young seals telling them to lay off the nightlife. But take away that single comma, and suddenly, the seals become the direct object. Stop clubbing baby seals. It instantly becomes a grave plea against animal cruelty. That is the immense power of just one tiny mark. It completely rewrites reality. The brilliant grammarian Lynn Truss, you probably know her from her bestseller Eats, Shoots, and Leaves, really hits the nail on the head here. She says that without punctuation, there is simply no reliable way of communicating meaning. If you want your reader to actually hear your voice and get your exact intentions, you've absolutely got to master these structural tools. Moving on to Section 2, the core 14 marks, time to unpack our survival kit. Depending on the language you're speaking, the number of punctuation marks varies wildly. French has 17, Arabic has 6, but in English, we've got a wonderfully chaotic collection of exactly 14 essential marks. Here's your complete kit. We've got the heavy-duty terminal stops, the full stop or period, as our American friends say, the question mark, and the exclamation point. We have our tools for pause and division, so your commas, semicolons, and colons. Then there are internal connectors like dashes and hyphens, enclosures like parentheses and brackets, and finally marks for omission and ownership, your apostrophes, quotation marks, ellipses, and the slash. Now, most of these are pretty everyday tools, but a few are just wonderfully obscure. For instance, you might not recognize this little beauty at first glance. Meet the intro bang. It's quite literally a question mark and an exclamation point superimposed right on top of each other. It was invented specifically to convey those really surprising or exciting questions like, "You did what?" Now, while it's fantastic for casual writing or dropping into a text message to a mate, you'll definitely want to leave the intro bang at home when you're tackling formal or academic writing. A standard question mark will do just fine there. Right then, Section 3, mastering the tricky comma. Let's tame this little beast. Commas are primarily there to aid in clarity, to separate elements, and to join independent clauses. But when they're misplaced or just totally forgotten, the results can be an absolute disaster. Let me ask you this. Which sentence prevents an unintended cannibalistic dinner? Let's eat, Grandma, or let's eat, Grandma. I'll give you a second. Yep, you guessed it, it's the first one. The grandma comma is the ultimate test for direct address. Let's eat, Grandma nicely invites the poor woman to the dinner table. Let's eat, Grandma makes her the main course. Honestly, the comma literally saves her life. Let's look at another classic breakdown. I love cooking my family and my dog. Goodness me. Without commas to separate the items in this series, you're essentially telling the world you enjoy roasting your relatives and the family pet. Add the commas in and they act as vital separators. I love cooking, my family, and my dog. 3 distinct, non-violent things that you love. It's an absolute lifesaver. Now, beyond saving your family members from the oven, commas are also absolutely essential for joining full sentences together. Which brings up a crucial question for you all. Do you know the fanboys rule? It's literally one of the best tricks out there for fixing the dreaded comma splice, or a run-on sentence. You know, when you just smash 2 complete thoughts together without the proper glue. Let's fix that. Fanboys is an acronym, and it stands for and, nor, but, or, yet, so. The absolute golden rule here is that when you want to join two independent clauses, meaning two sentences that could perfectly stand on their own, you must use a comma before one of these coordinating conjunctions. For example, writing, "I write every day because practice matters" is incorrect. Because isn't a fanboy. But "I write every day and practice matters" is spot on. This little acronym is your definitive survival tool for connecting ideas without causing a massive grammatical pileup. Okay, section 4, navigating quotes and brackets. Let's look at nested punctuation. We're now venturing into slightly more hazardous terrain, nested punctuation. This is where multiple marks collide, especially when handling speech and internal notes. It can feel a bit like a maze, but there are clear rules. Let's tackle dialogue. In American English, heavily dictated since the 1906 Chicago Manual of Style, commas and full stops always tuck neatly inside the closing quotation marks. It's often called a rule without exception over there. So, "I love this story" with the comma tucked nicely inside is correct for US audiences. But if you're writing in British English, it's worth remembering that we generally place those commas and full stops outside the quotation marks unless they were actually part of the original quote. Question marks and exclamation points only go inside if they logically apply to the quoted phrase itself. It's a small difference, but an absolutely crucial one depending on who you're writing for. Here's another really tricky nesting scenario. What on earth do you do when you need parentheses inside parentheses? If you've got a parenthetical aside, and inside that you need to add a date or clarification, using back-to-back curved parentheses is just visually confusing. It looks like a typo. The solution is actually brilliant. Use square brackets for the inner nested information. It instantly clears up the visual hierarchy for your reader. And finally, section 5, style guides and consistency. Out in the wild, your survival depends entirely on having a good map. In writing, that map is your style guide. Whether you're using AP, MLA, APA, or Chicago style, picking a specific framework is exactly what separates amateur writing from a professional, polished piece. The funny thing is, these guides don't actually agree with each other. The famous Oxford comma, the one right before the "and" in a list, is required by Chicago, but AP style tells you to drop it. Hyphenation rules are all over the place. Even capitalizing the first word after a colon depends entirely on the guide. The absolute golden rule here isn't which guide you pick. It's that once you pick one, you have to be ruthlessly consistent with it from start to finish. Take a look at this real-world cheat sheet from the Chicago Manual of Style. Notice how beautifully it breaks down the rules. A colon introduces an amplification or an illustration. Think of it like a drum roll pointing to the second clause. Ta-da! A semicolon, on the other hand, is used to join two independent clauses when there's no conjunction, which shows a much closer relationship than a full stop ever could. Let's see how this builds into more complex structures, like vertical lists. Generally speaking, if a run-in list is introduced by a complete sentence, you use a colon. And if the items in a vertical list are full sentences themselves, they start with a capital letter and end with a full stop. It's all about creating visual and structural harmony on the page, so your reader's brain doesn't have to work overtime just to understand your basic meaning. Before we wrap up, I want to share one of the absolute best editing tips from our source material today. Read one page aloud every day. Ears catch what eyes miss. It's so true. When you read your own writing aloud, you physically experience the pauses, the stops, and the emphasis. If you're gasping for air midway through a sentence, mate, you probably need a full stop. If you stumble over the words, your punctuation is likely off. Reading aloud restores that vocal element we talked about right at the start. Let's conclude our explainer today with a really provocative thought straight from the political science style guides. As our culture evolves, so does our terminology. How do phrases like alternative facts reshape the rules of our communication? Do we use quotation marks to show irony, or maybe to distance ourselves from a statement? You see, punctuation isn't just rigid, dusty law. It constantly adapts to the way we think and speak. I'm not taking a side here, but it's totally fascinating to ponder how the punctuation marks you choose today frame the reality you present to the world tomorrow. Keep practicing, stay ruthlessly consistent, and a massive thank you for joining me on this survival guide journey. Cheers, everyone!